President Bola Tinubu will on Friday present the 2026 Appropriation Bill to a joint session of the National Assembly. According to a notice from the Office of the Clerk to the National Assembly, the presentation is scheduled for 2 p.m. The budget presentation is expected to outline the administration's fiscal priorities for the year ahead. The National Economic Council has set up a high-level committee to fast-track livestock development as the federal government moves to tackle the farmer heather crisis and strengthen food security. Vice President Kashim Shettima says only practical and nationally accepted solutions can end the violence and stabilize the economy. TVC News' Femi Akande reports.
The decision was taken at the 155th meeting of the National Economic Council, held virtually and chaired by Vice President Kashim Shettima. A new livestock development committee, chaired by the Kebbi State Governor, will drive reforms across the sector, with representatives from all 6 geopolitical zones and key federal ministries. VP Shettima says resolving the farmer heather crisis is central to food security and national stability.
What began as a challenge of coexistence gradually hardened into cycles of violence that were allowed to persist for far too long without a durable solution. Today, that violence respects no geography. It has become a shared nightmare that has scared every region, disrupted livelihoods, and eroded trust between neighbors who once relied on one another for survival.
The committee will review recommendations of the Presidential Livestock Reform Committee and identify states ready to implement modern livestock production systems. The Minister of Finance and Coordinating Minister of the Economy says the reforms are critical to economic growth and investor confidence.
The progress that has been made under the able, courageous and bold leadership and economic reform program under the renewed hope agenda by His Excellency President Bola Ahmed Tinubu, GCFR, is clear and yet needs reinforcing. It needs to be sustained.
The Minister of Budget and Economic Planning says the initiative aligns with the government's development priorities.
Council considered listening to the presentations and reconstituted an existing National Economic Council Committee on National Livestock Transformation into a National Economic Council on Livestock Development.
Vice President Kashim Shettima commended President Bola Tinubu for creating a standalone Ministry of Livestock Development and urged states to fully embrace the reform agenda. The federal government says the livestock initiative will help end decades of conflict, restore rural economies, and transform the sector into a modern and profitable engine of national development. Femi Akande, TVC News, Abuja.